You know that heavy, sluggish feeling that hits you like a ton of bricks around 3 in the afternoon? The one where your eyelids feel like sandbags and your brain starts moving through molasses. Most people chalk it up to a bad night's sleep or the heavy pasta they had for lunch. But the real culprit is a biochemical storm brewing in your bloodstream. And right now, tucked away deep in the back of your lower leg, there's a small, unassuming band of tissue that most of the population couldn't name if their life depended on it. It hides behind your shin bone, buried beneath the bulky, visible calf muscle that flexes every time you stand on your tiptoes. You won't see it in the mirror, and you rarely feel it consciously. But this particular player has a remarkable, almost freakish ability. It can vacuum glucose out of your circulation, giving your overworked pancreas a much-needed break without that organ even having to lift a finger. I'm Dr. Joseph Miller, and today we're going to dissect why that afternoon crash happens and how this forgotten muscle in your calf is your metabolic secret weapon. A groundbreaking 2022 study published in the journal iScience by researchers at the University of Houston put some staggering numbers on this phenomenon. They found that when people deliberately switch this specific muscle on while remaining seated, yes, fully planted in a chair, their post-meal blood sugar surge dropped by roughly half. No gym clothes, no restrictive diets, no prescription refills, just one subtle desk-friendly movement. By the time we finish here, you'll stop blaming that mid-afternoon energy nosedive on your age or the size of your sandwich. Before we dive into the mechanics, if you appreciate health content that cuts through the noise and gives you real, actionable science, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. We're marching toward 300,000 subscribers, and your engagement is the fuel that keeps this channel growing. Also, for practical at-a-glance checklists and follow-up resources, I post regularly on my Telegram channel. Scan the QR code glowing on your screen right now to join that community. Now, let's get under the hood of your metabolism to see what's really going on. To fully grasp the post-lunch slump, you have to start with glucose. In its purest form, glucose is simple sugar, but in your body it acts as high-octane fuel. This word is critical: fuel. Every single cell in your human machine runs on it. Your muscles burn it for contraction. Your liver stores it for a rainy day. And your brain, this is the non-negotiable part, depends on it almost exclusively. Cut off your brain's glucose supply for more than a few minutes, and your thoughts turn to static. Focus evaporates. So, right off the bat, get this straight. Glucose is not the villain in this story. It is a basic, life-sustaining requirement. The real problem isn't the glucose itself. It's the volume and speed at which it floods your system, leaving your body scrambling to find a place to park it all. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, sweets, and yes, even certain fruits, your digestive tract breaks those carbs down into individual glucose molecules. These molecules pour into your bloodstream. That's normal and expected. The chaos starts when that pour turns into a tidal wave. Imagine a calm two-lane highway during off-peak hours. Traffic flows smoothly. Now imagine rush hour hits all at once, with thousands of cars merging from every on-ramp simultaneously. The highway strains, speeds drop, and the system gridlocks. That's exactly what happens to your blood vessels during a sharp glucose spike. Your body registers this surge instantly and sends a high-priority alert to your pancreas, a small, flattened gland nestled behind your stomach. The order is urgent. Deploy insulin, and deploy it now. Think of insulin as a highly efficient warehouse logistics manager. Its sole job is to grab that sugar from the bloodstream and deliver it into your cells, where it can either be used as immediate energy or stored for later. Some of it gets sent to your muscle fibers. A massive chunk heads to your liver, where it's compressed into a storage form called glycogen, essentially your body's backup battery. But here is where the narrative takes a sharp turn. If your muscle cells are already fully charged, and your liver's storage tanks are topped off, and you're parked motionless on the sofa after dinner, your body still has to handle the surplus. It doesn't have a delete button. Instead, it takes that leftover glucose and converts it into fat, tucking it away into your adipose tissue. And once it's locked in there, it is extraordinarily stubborn about coming back out. Meanwhile, your diligent insulin manager has overperformed. It has cleared so much sugar so quickly that your blood glucose level now drops below where it was before you even took your first bite. This is the crash. This is the genesis of the exhaustion millions of people describe every single day. Your brain, utterly dependent on that sugar, perceives this rapid drop as an existential threat. It sends out a distress signal. Energy reserves are critically low. Immediate intervention required. Suddenly, a wave of profound tiredness washes over you. Your thinking gets sluggish, almost sticky. Your focus scatters. And then comes that near uncontrollable primal urge for a quick fix. A cookie, a candy bar, that leftover donut in the break room. Let me be crystal clear. This is not a moral failing. This is not a lack of discipline or willpower. This is pure, unadulterated biochemistry. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved over millennia to do, safeguarding its own survival by screaming for more fuel. The sugar spiked fast, plunged fast, and now your cerebral cortex is in energy conservation mode, dialing down non-essential functions to keep the lights on. That is the authentic reality of the 3 p.m. wall. I recall a case from my review of clinical patterns that illustrates this perfectly. A woman named Linda, 44 years old, worked as a certified public accountant. Brilliant, meticulous, razor sharp in the early hours. But without fail, every afternoon following her lunch break, she hit a cognitive brick wall. She'd stare at spreadsheets, unable to reconcile the numbers. And like clockwork at 3 p.m., she'd shuffle to the vending machine for a chocolate bar. For years, she internalized a story of personal failure. She had a sweet tooth. She lacked control. That narrative couldn't have been further from the truth. Her brain was merely riding a predictable biochemical roller coaster. The chocolate gave her a temporary rescue, spiking her glucose back up, only to have it plummet again an hour later. By 6 p.m., she felt utterly drained, even on days with minimal actual workload. She wasn't exhausted from her job. She was exhausted from an undiagnosed glycemic seesaw that no one had ever taken the time to explain to her. And here is the critical takeaway. Every single one of those spikes extracts a cost. Each surge forces your pancreas to fire off another massive wave of insulin. Once, twice, 1,000 times, year after year. Eventually, the bill comes due. So what does the long-term ledger look like? Your pancreas is not an infinite resource. It has a functional lifespan. Each excessive insulin demand wears it down just a fraction. At first, it keeps pace easily. Then its response slows. Eventually, your cells, having been repeatedly flooded, start to turn a deaf ear to the insulin signal. We have a name for this condition: insulin resistance. In straightforward terms, it means there's plenty of the delivery worker, insulin, banging on the door, but the cellular locks have jammed. To force the glucose inside anyway, your pancreas has to release even more insulin. More and more, working harder, getting less return. The insidious part is that for years, your standard blood work might look pristine. No alarms, no flashing red diagnosis. Yet the fatigue is tangible. The stubborn belly fat accumulates. The cravings are relentless. You live in this gray zone, feeling off but unable to pinpoint the root cause, and it feels too trivial to bother your doctor about. But ironically, this very moment, when nothing is officially broken, is the absolute easiest window to reverse the trajectory. Here's another archetype that appears constantly in primary care. A man named Mike, 52 years old, visits his physician complaining about persistent lower back pain. Nothing sugar-related, right? But during the consultation, he offhandedly mentions that he's been hungry all the time lately, even right after finishing a full meal. An hour later, he's foraging for snacks. The doctor orders routine blood work. Mike's fasting glucose comes back right at the top edge of the normal reference range. Not diabetic, not even officially pre-diabetic by some charts. But to a seasoned clinician, that borderline number tells a story of a pancreas running near its red line. The reserve capacity is shrinking. The only reason no one raised a flag earlier is that, on paper, everything looked fine. If we allow this process to run its course, insulin resistance gently slides into prediabetes, and prediabetes inevitably progresses into type 2 diabetes. From there, the complications get serious: vascular damage, vision impairment, kidney stress, and slow healing wounds. This isn't fear-mongering. It is the daily reality of medical practices across the country. But here's the golden thread of hope. While your numbers are still in that gray normal zone, all of this can be arrested, decelerated, and in many instances, reversed. The instrument you need is far more accessible than a prescription pad. That instrument is your own skeletal muscle. Inside every muscle cell are microscopic power plants called mitochondria. You don't need to memorize the name, just the function. They work like miniature blast furnaces. They grab glucose from the blood, ignite it, and convert it into kinetic energy for movement and heat. While you're completely stationary, those furnaces idle on a low pilot light. They require almost no fuel. But the instant a muscle fiber contracts, those furnaces roar to life, burning glucose at an accelerated rate. This is where the biology gets extraordinarily elegant. Normally, glucose requires the insulin key to unlock the cell door. No key, no entry. But an active contracting muscle has a back door, a separate insulin-independent pathway. It opens its own entryway, no key required. The moment you contract that muscle, glucose flows directly from the bloodstream into the hungry cell. Your pancreas doesn't even need to be involved in the transaction. Blood sugar drops, insulin stays calm, and the roller coaster never leaves the station. This is precisely why the 90-minute window after a meal is the most valuable metabolic real estate of your entire day. That is when glucose is rising. That is the exact window where your muscles can intercept it directly, redirecting it away from fat storage and bypassing the need for a massive insulin fire drill. So which muscle does this heavy lifting best? That brings us back to the hidden player in your calf. But first, a quick disclaimer. Muscle activity truly does dictate blood sugar control, and the scientific consensus on this is rock solid. However, it only confers benefits if you do it consistently. One walk after one meal helps that one meal. A daily habit of moving after eating slowly rewires your entire systemic glucose handling. Your cells regain their insulin sensitivity. Your muscles become ravenous for sugar. Your metabolism shifts gears. The magic ingredient here is consistency, not intensity. Now let's focus on that muscle at the back of your lower leg. just below the knee joint. You have two primary muscles stacked there. The superficial one, the bulge you see when you rise onto your toes, is the gastrocnemius. That's the show-off. But buried underneath it, deeper in the anatomical layer, sits a flat, powerful muscle called the soleus. Most folks have absolutely no clue it exists. It doesn't show in a mirror. You can't isolate it voluntarily in the way you can a bicep. And yet, pound for pound, when we're talking about extracting glucose from your circulation, no other skeletal muscle in the human body even comes close to its efficiency. The University of Houston researchers I mentioned earlier ran a landmark experiment. They had participants sit comfortably in a chair and perform one incredibly simple post-meal movement, lifting and lowering their heels while keeping their toes planted firmly on the floor. You could be typing an email, watching a show, or on a conference call. Your daily routine wouldn't be disrupted at all. The only thing moving was the back of your foot. The outcomes were astonishing, even to the investigators. The post-meal glucose spike dropped by roughly 52%. Insulin release plummeted by close to 60%. That second statistic is massive. It indicates that the pancreas barely had to engage. The soleus was vacuuming glucose out of the bloodstream so efficiently that a large insulin response was rendered completely superfluous. You can try this right now while you're listening to this. Plant both feet flat on the floor. Press your toes down. Now gently lift your heels up and let them return down. Up, down, at a relaxed, natural pace. No urgency, no strain. You can execute this at your workstation, on your couch, or in a waiting room, and no one around you will even notice. 10 to 15 minutes of this subtle heel pumping after a meal is sufficient to produce a tangible, measurable difference in your postprandial blood sugar. While the soleus is your most efficient single tool, it doesn't have to work alone. The more muscle mass you recruit after a meal, your legs, your core, your back, your arms, the more glucose evacuates your blood, and the faster it happens. Let's look at a few other options that fit seamlessly into a normal day without any special preparation. First up is the classic post-meal walk. In a controlled trial, two groups consumed the same standardized meal. One group remained sedentary afterward. The other took a leisurely 10-minute stroll at a casual pace. The walking group's blood sugar peak was roughly half of what the sedentary group recorded. Notice we are not prescribing an hour on a treadmill or sprint intervals, just 10 minutes at an easygoing speed. The specific route is irrelevant. Step outside around the block, pace laps around your living room while scrolling your phone, or climb a few flights of stairs. The sole mandate is movement over stillness. The second option is body weight squats, which work even faster. The logic is straightforward. Squats engage the largest muscle groups in your entire body, your quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes. Bigger engines burn more fuel per minute. Technique is simple. Stand with your feet roughly shoulder-width apart, toes angled slightly outward. Lower your hips backward and down as far as feels comfortable for your joints. You don't need to hit a perfect parallel. Keep your spine neutral and allow your knees to track in line with your toes. Then push back up to standing. Execute 10 of these, slow and controlled. A brilliant anchor is to pair them with a routine action, like putting the kettle on for your after-dinner tea. While the water heats, you do your set. That's exactly the right duration to give your glucose somewhere productive to go. The final instrument is the most underestimated of all, housework. People already do it. The misstep is that they usually perform it before eating, or an hour later, once the sugar has already been shuttled into storage. The trick is to initiate it immediately after the meal. 15 minutes of tidying up post-dinner in terms of glycemic control, is roughly equivalent to a 10-minute walk. Hand wash the dishes. You're standing, you're shifting weight. Wipe down the counters. Sweep the kitchen floor. Stow away leftovers. Your body is in motion, your muscles are engaged, and your circulating glucose is being siphoned off into productive cellular work. You don't even need to summon motivation for this, because it's a task you're going to do anyway. Here's what I genuinely appreciate about these 4 tools. You don't have to restructure your life around them. No earlier wake-up calls. No costly gym memberships that can range from $20 to several $100s a month. No workout apparel. No personal trainer. You simply stop being stationary for 10 to 15 minutes after you eat. Or if you absolutely prefer to sit, then sit and wiggle your heels. That's the whole strategy. Now, there's a nuance worth singling out. The rate at which insulin resistance develops and how swiftly you can rebuild insulin sensitivity is heavily influenced by your age. Once you cross the 40-year mark, muscle mass naturally begins a slow decline unless you actively resist it. Clinicians call this process sarcopenia. Less muscle volume means a smaller sugar disposal system. A smaller disposal system translates to amplified pressure on the pancreas. More pressure means the roller coaster gets louder and more turbulent. Drop a quick comment below with your current age. It genuinely helps me gauge who's in the audience and how timely this topic is for our community right now. Let's synthesize all of this. In the immediate short term, if you adopt the habit of moving right after your meals, you will notice a difference within days. That stubborn afternoon fog will start to burn off. Your mental clarity in the late hours will sharpen. Your energy will stop its free fall an hour after your last bite. And that gnawing, urgent call for a sugary rescue will quietly begin to lose its stranglehold on your willpower. In the long arc, however, you are doing something vastly more consequential. You are taking the load off your pancreas. Every single time your muscles handle glucose directly, your pancreas gets a reprieve. Year after year, these small breaks accumulate into a substantial reserve. That is the dividing line between maintaining robust metabolic health well into your 60s and 70s versus slowly drifting toward insulin resistance, prediabetes, and eventually type 2 diabetes. So, here is the practical roadmap. Be acutely mindful of what you do in that critical 15 to 20-minute window following a meal. Try those seated heel raises at least once today, and observe how you feel afterward. It is also worth bringing up your fasting glucose number with your physician at your next checkup, and if they deem it appropriate, asking for a hemoglobin A1C test, which offers a 3-month average of your blood sugar levels. If you are currently on medications such as metformin, or using supplements like berberine or magnesium glycinate that some individuals take for blood sugar management, those are absolutely discussions to have with your personal healthcare provider, not with a YouTube channel. Please take the practical, actionable insights from this presentation, but always run them past a professional who understands your comprehensive health history before making any changes. If you found value in this breakdown, drop a like and subscribe. That is the single best way to ensure this channel continues to grow and reach others who are navigating the exact same pattern. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.